So this talk is about leading from passion, and it's more of a personal experience that I'm going to share with how Arkane was built and what was behind us, what kind of mindset we had and our history and how the struggles, etc. It's more about that. So hopefully it's going to be inspiring to some of you who want to create complex, projects like being a company or whatever. And it's more about that than like sharing techniques, because there's, I think the personal experience has its own value. And what's interesting here is that we really didn't start with any, we did not have any specific knowledge. We were not coming from any big company. We were just passionate. So let's do it. Arkane, just a brief summary. We did all these games. So that's Arx Fatalis, Dark Messiah. We co-developed Bioshock 2, and then we did Dishonored, Dishonored 2, and Prey. And that we were created in '99 with very little funding and close to no experience. I personally came from EA. I had 4 years with EA. I studied their customer support in France, as you can tell by my accent. I'm French. And then for 2 years, I worked in England as an assistant producer, designer kind of guy. We somehow survived for years without making any money and going under about 10 times. But it worked until we opened the Austin studio here in Texas. I did this in 2005. At this point, we had 4 people in Lyon, then we had about 50 people in Lyon, France, when I moved myself here to Austin, and we kept growing. Then we sold to Bethesda in 2010, and today it's still going, except that I left about a year ago, and because I'd like to see what's next for me. All right, so I'm going to give a few statements randomly, occasionally between the bits of stories. But the thing is, that's an easy one to say. Extraordinary things require extraordinary effort. And whoever hopes to make good things by working just a few hours a day is probably going to find it difficult to achieve. Games are hard because most of the process is R&D. And because they are at the intersection of art and technology, which are two things that are really go at odds with each other. One is about being meticulously planned and going with that precise plan and not changing things and foreseeing everything. The other one is about iterating and changing their mind all the time. So that's been always a challenge, and I'm sure all of you experience that. And it's getting worse as the industry is pushing towards bigger and bigger teams, and therefore you need to be even more organized, and therefore you have even less flexibility on your creative side. And so here's the question about the leadership, even though, since it seems to be the theme of this event. There's the question: am I a leader or not? I don't really think I'm a leader. When I left Arkane, Todd Vaughn, who was the guy who made the acquisition possible, he's the VP of game development at Bethesda. He really liked us, and he's this poker face guy, doesn't talk much and doesn't give much compliments. But when I left, he said, "Your superpower is that people will follow you." And I thought about that. I was, that's weird. I thought he would say like I'm creative or whatever. But he says my superpower is that people will follow me, and I think it's true. When I'm on a mission, people will follow me. So the thing is, I was never really one to take a manager role. I can't see myself working. I don't have any techniques for management. I'm not like the McDonald's manager and trying to motivate people with some weird techniques about like their bonuses, etc. I'm more. People want to help me because I communicate some sort of passion, some energy that people really want to help for some reason, right? So I think I was a leader of my own life. That's how I would say. I could not see myself as a kid. I could not see myself following a normal path. I was always trying to find the secret passage in the wall, so that I could not see myself work for some company, go home, go to the bar on the weekends. I wanted to do comic books. I wanted to write my own stories. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to make video games. I mean, something like that. Something that felt to me a little more personal and fun. You know, it's all about fun as well. And if none of this had happened, frankly, I think I'd be an outlaw. I would probably have robbed the bank or something, because I really don't like the common life. So I've always been my own unit. That's definitely a trait, I think. And also, I'm naive. You know, I'm still naive. Whether it's in dating or in anything, I just take crazy risks, and I hope it's going to work, and then I see once I'm there if it's working or not. You know, if you think about it, like, there are probably two types of people. If you've never done something, like you've never done a house, you've never built a house, you know, there are the people who go around and people will tell, oh, no, man, we're doing a house. It's so hard. You don't want to do that yourself. And then they don't do it because they believe it, you know, or they heard the cousin did it and it was so hard. And then there are the other type who's, oh yeah, I mean, how hard can it be? You know, I'll just go to Home Depot, buy a few bags of cement and a shovel, and I'll start with the foundation and see where it goes as I'm going. I'm more that type. But worse than that, I'm the type who wants to do not really just a house. I would want to try the crazy house that nobody has tried before, and that the experts will tell me, no, man, don't do that. That, like, we've all thought about that house. It's impossible. It's just impossible. And I think being naive allows you to do impossible things, because otherwise the world would still be what it was a few thousands of years ago. And so I think it's always with the naive force that we manage to go further and move the needle. Okay, so starting Arkane, I was on a mission, and these were my games that I was, not my games, sorry, these were the games that I was a big fan of. When I was 15 until 2023, those were the games. That phase of my life as a gamer was so defining to my passion, and there was just, I was living for those games. So Ultima Underworld, some of them were made actually here in Austin. So Ultima Underworld was produced in Austin, but was made in Boston by Looking Glass. Ultima 7 was here, made in Austin by Origin, Richard Garriott. Fallout, the first Fallout, was made by Black Isle. Thief, Looking Glass. System Shock, Looking Glass. And Deus Ex, here in Iron Storm in Austin, by Warren Spector and a guy called Harvey Smith. So I was big fans of those guys. For me, those guys were all gods. And I was nothing. I like, nobody knew me. I didn't know anyone. But I was a big fan of those games. And so when it comes to how am I going to do that, like I want to make one of those games. I mean, my own take on it, of course. I'm not just going to do that game, but I want to be inspired by those games. And of course, if you think about it, most people, when they start a company, they have this reasonable strategy where, like, there's a business plan. There's they have planned everything. You know, like how much money they're going to spend on over how many months, and the ramp up and the ramp down, and this and that, and the licensing, and that's cool. And also, they think about how do we make money. I mean, that's the biggest question, really. And I personally, I mean, as much as this can work, I personally think that the best, most successful businesses, like Google, Apple, Facebook, Tesla, even though I don't know for a fact, but I bet they were all made from passion. I bet that their visionary probably had some level of naivety as well, and they thought the world needed that thing that they had in their heads. Disregard the economics of the business plan. They wanted to move the needle, because at the end of the day, I think it's all about moving the needle. If we can do things that other people have done, as a leader, and as a leader that has a chance to attract people, it won't work. Because people who want to help leaders, they want to help them because they want to share a dream with them. They want to feel that passion. There are some amazing people out there that will follow people that have passion. even if it's a craziest dream. So we went instead with the strategy of the miracle. That was in '99. Yeah. Yeah, it's always funny to see that picture. So we started with this game, Arx Fatalis, and we started with our own engine on PC, 4 people, and what we had was we had a year of funding ahead of us for 4 people. That was it. So we gave up all our work. We gave up everything to focus. We took an office. We didn't do it like half-assed. We did not started to work on that game. Meanwhile, we're still working at our own thing, our old jobs. No, we dropped everything all in for 12 months, 4 people in a room. And when I started Arkane, it came from that desire to see Arx Fatalis see the day. It was the most important thing in my life at the time, more important than my health. I mean, I was 29, so of course I didn't care about that. More important than my fun, dating, anything, family. I was obsessed. The world needed that game, and I was going to bring it to the world. It was not another game that I wanted to make. There was no plan B. This was the game I wanted to do, and I was going to do it. And I had a very precise idea in mind. The thing also, so that's why I'm saying no plan B. I was fully committed to it. If you have a plan B, it means that you're not really committed to plan A. And that's probably an advice that nobody's going to give you in business, right? Everybody's like, what's your plan B? I don't have a plan B because I want plan A to work. There's no other option. So the other thing I had to do is I had to force myself to be naive a little bit again, because after EA, and not to specifically talk about EA, but like those big companies, they kind of castrate you. When you go to big companies now, you know a little more about how to make a game, how to build a house. It's like, oh shit, you see that it's hard, but also they make it harder than it should, because like you see that it needs 10 people to move a desk, and you wonder, okay, well, can I even do anything on my own now? So it did take an effort to unlearn that the way of the big companies, and I'm not picking on them specifically. It's just big companies do that. So it can feel lonely as well when you start like this, because the actors of the industry don't trust you yet because you're new and young. Your peers try to convince you that your idea might fail. The reality is that most people that bet on failure are right. If any project that starts now, you can bet that it's going to fail, and you're probably going to be right, because most of the time they do fail. So there's no benefit, there's no credits to those people that manage to predict failure. The ones that are more interesting are the ones that manage to predict success, because otherwise they're always right. I mean, they're mostly right. The no-sayers. But anyway, that mentality gave me rage, and that rage, that place of anger and determination is what gave me the momentum and the strength to break through all those doors and to make it happen. And again, that's how I realized that there are a lot of good people out there, and they will want to follow you because they feel that. They feel that this guy knows where he's going, and I don't exactly know, but it feels beautiful, and I want to be there with him or her. So that's how I look at it. And so in this talk, you'll see how everything constantly comes back to passion, and how I've been living a fan's dream all my life. In fact, even in other areas than video game development, I've been living a fan's dream and gifted myself with a little fan presence all along. I'll tell you how. So it feels a little bit like high-fiving your 15 years old self. Like, you wanted that? Yeah, you go. You have it now. All right, so let's go with the story. So as every story, there's an arc and there's different phases. So it starts with the struggle. In our case, the struggle was very long. And so in '99, when we started, the publishers were the bottleneck of the industry. It's not today. We have way more options. There are things like crowdfunding. In general, there are more ways to access to money, and also there is Steam, so you can somewhat try to self-publish your game. Back then, there was only 20 potential clients, and if those 20 say no, you're screwed. You just go home. So we made this. We started on a demo and our plan was, okay, we have 1 year of funding. 6 months into that demo, we are going to go to publishers. Because I'm from EA, we're going to get a deal with EA, and it's going to be awesome. That was the plan. And of course, as EA didn't even want to meet us. We were too small. And then we met with Microsoft. Microsoft was awesome to meet. They were super immediate to say, yes, let's meet. So we met them at ECTS in England at a show. Two guys, they were really sharp, really good developers, and they loved the demo. They were super nice, etc. And that felt great. I met also some Ubisoft guy. He liked the game. Felt great too. Came back to the office. Said to my guys, I think we have a deal very soon. Like, be prepared for success. And then I started to realize the difference between people that are polite in business and when you really have a deal, right? And so, like, the Microsoft guys were absolutely enthusiastic, but they never really replied. And eventually, after weeks and weeks of me insisting on email, they would reply to me. And we were too small. Again, it's like we had way too many problems. We just have 4 people. Like, how would they trust us? And Ubisoft, I realized I was talking to the wrong guy, because I was talking to an assistant producer who just didn't have any power. That's the reality of trying to sign a deal. So that's why sometimes agents can help, or being connected can help as well. But at first, it's very hard, right? Because really, publishers have a plan. They have their lineup, and if you don't fit that plan, it's not it's not like you bringing another game that they don't really have in their plans. Mostly they're going to say no. So anyway, at some point we're about to close again, because it went down and down and down, and nobody wants to sign us. But we had this cool demo. This demo was really cool. Everybody that watched it really liked it. And so at some point we decided, you know what, I'm going to do the fan thing. I'm going to contact Looking Glass. I'm going to contact Origin. I'm going to do some PR. I'm going to contact some websites that are fans of that type of game. Arx Fatalis was an RPG, role-playing game that was pretty complicated to do, but fans of that genre are, they are big into that type of game, so they would do anything to see one more of them. So anyway, show that to Paul Neurath from Looking Glass, and he met me, which was like, oh my God, the guy from Looking Glass is going to meet me. And so Doc Church as well. Doc Church was the guy that programmed the original Underworld. And this guy replied to my email. I was like, this guy replied to my email. And Richard as well. Richard was nice, etc. So that felt cool. And then I would start talking to PR people, saying like, even Paul Neurath liked the game, because it was kind of true, and that's all I had. It's not like I could, name dropping thing, but that's all I had back then. So so that helped, and then that website called TTLG, and you see how everything is linked after, because all of this mini investment of mine somehow paid off. That website TTLG published this article, this interview, big interview, videos, etc. And it started to spread. It started to have a snowball effect, like some other website would report it, even though we did not have a deal, which is another thing that is crazy. Talking about it's not anymore. Now that's what people do, right? We call that social media. But back then, you would not announce a game that it doesn't even have a publisher. And that brought 2 weeks before we were gonna close, because at this point we were running out of money. 2 weeks before that, it brought actually our publisher. So 2 things happened. One is Bethesda contacted us. And that's that guy, Todd. And said, hey, can I see the game? And so I showed him the game. And he said, well, give me 2 weeks. And in the meantime, at the same time, we met another publisher called Fish Tank, German publishers. The guy was a big fan of the same games as I was fan of. Like, it was his life, And he didn't care if this game was going to make money, because it probably was not going to make money. But they signed us. He had a deal ready. He wanted that game. And we were like a week or 2 of going under. So I signed the deal. It was the best day of my life at that time. And then Todd called me again a week later. So I said, well, sorry, we just signed with Fish Tank, etc. And I never heard from him again. So that's the Arx Fatalis story. Then it shipped, but before it shipped, our publisher went under. So it shipped with no marketing. It died. Yeah, it's like, this terrible thing that happened. The game tanked entirely. Now, if you Google Arx Fatalis, for some reason it's a cult. It's like this really cool game from the 90s. Back then, we did not make a cent on it. Now it's making more money today with Steam. Not for me, by the way, because Bethesda bought it, but it's making more money today than it was ever when it shipped. Right? We saw $0 of that game, but it was fun to make, and back then it was crushing because it felt like a biggest failure. Like, we've been working on this thing for 4 years. People like it. We had great reviews. Okay, it crashes all the time, but tons of bugs. I mean, there were reasons why it did not sell. I mean, we did not even have the money to make a patch anyway. But you know, that's the story with Arx. But what Arx allowed us to is to meet Valve. Now, those were going to save us because Valve is cool. And so a little bit before E3, I get an email from one of the Valve employees, Mark Laidlaw, is the writer. And he says he's played Arx and he loves it. I also got an email from Richard Garriott that he played Arx and he was stuck and he needed some extra arrows. So I made him a little script so that he could have his arrows. I mean, I played Richard Garriott again when I was 11, and for me, he was the biggest god in the universe. So having this guy contacting me, liking my thing, was just like pure gold. You know, it doesn't pay the bills, but it was so powerful at a personal level. So met with Valve at E3. 2 or 3 of them, they said they played the game, they liked it, they tell me detail about the experience. I'm just like totally nerding out with them. And they say, and by the way, do you want to see our little demo? And so they were showing Half-Life 2 back then, which was, I'm sure some remember, like this absolutely amazing engine back in the days. And so I look at it, I say, hey, this is fantastic. And they say, and by the way, if you want, you can actually have it. You know, you can have it for your next game. And I was like, really? And so we had like a very cheap deal to make our next game with their engine, and so that changed the deal entirely. Now we're making that demo, so we stopped making our current demo. We switched to that engine. Our demo was amazing, very very impressive demo for the time. So we'd go to those shows, and we'd feel like we were the kings because everybody wanted a piece of that game. However, everybody except everybody, because at the end of the day, they would look at the numbers for Arx Fatalis. See that we're trying to make Arx Fatalis 2. Yes, the demo was impressive. It was with the Valve engine, blah, blah, blah. But were they going to make money with it? Probably not. So again, that was another long descent to hell and to closing the company until Todd Vaughn came up from Bethesda. And he saw the demo. I was very impressed. He said, give me 2 weeks. And then at the same time, you already know where that's going. At the same time, Ubisoft was there, extremely impressed with the game. They said, look, do the game that you want to make, but call it Dark Messiah. Might and Magic. They wanted to use the Might and Magic franchise. That felt like so hard because I said no compromise, no plan B. I know what I'm doing. I want to make my games, nothing else. But hey, we're gonna die, so so let's do it. And it's still our game because they said, you know, don't worry, just make your game. So we did. We signed. Todd came back and said, sorry, we really had to sign a deal. So he doesn't answer. Now, I think with Dark Messiah is that it was a great game. It was the first game with first-person melee combat that was actually pretty well done. Some people remember it, etc. It was a little rough on the edges. The budget from Ubisoft was actually pretty tiny, and you know, we fucked up. I mean, at the same time, we were still growing. At this time, we had 50 people maybe, so it was not an easy game to pull off. But it had a few innovative features that people really recognized and somehow contributed to advance that specific genre in the immersive sims type. But the game did not make money. It just did not make money, at least not for us. And because it was PC only mostly, and that was just probably a bad strategic choice. It had a lot of bugs, and that doesn't help either. So I was back to square one. This one, the depression comes back. But Valve they know how we work because they've seen, so they really like us. And so at this point, we go into a new phase, which is we work for Valve, co-develop some stuff for them that, by the way, never shipped, which is another crushing thing because you have like one day you wake up and guys, we're working with Valve. The next like guys, they're killing the thing we did. But at the same time, you still learn on the way and you meet some new people. And also we were able to fund our own IP called The Crossing. And The Crossing became one of the biggest vaporware, but it really managed to catch the attention of people without any marketing budget. I mean, we had the front cover of a Game for Windows magazine. The game premise was very interesting. The demo was actually really cool. It was fun. It was truly playable. But for some reason, the concept, which was probably too early back then, because it was about a single player person playing a story, meeting some multiplayer enemies that drop in and drop out of your game seamlessly. Back then, it was like impossible to understand for people as far as like, how are you going to get the matchmaking for that? You know, and now it's like a super common thing. But back then, it was a little too early. We did not have any experience in that specific field. So it felt like it was probably too ambitious. And so we never managed to sign a full deal with it. The only deal we could have had was with a company that wanted everything. The IP, it didn't give us a big budget, and it was really set us up for failure. We were very close to sign it though, but as we were about to sign this suicide deal, EA showed up. Actually, sorry, I'm going too fast with EA. As we were doing the game for Windows, we were also doing the BioShock 2 co-development. That came from one of the guys that was contracting for us, an ex-Looking Glass guy that I was a big fan of. I said, like, yeah, do you want to contract for us? I said yes, and then he saw how we worked. We were good, serious people. None of our games have been successful, but he saw our work. And then later on, when he was the creative director for BioShock 2, he contacted us. So that again is everything is linked as far as if you keeping the direction, it really pays off. Anyway, at this point we're almost dead again because that does not very much pay the bills. Most of all, if you are trying to fund your own game in the background, and my team was so crushed when we stopped doing The Crossing. But EA came by and offered us to work, and that guy is Doug Church, the creator of it was the mind of Looking Glass, was the creator of System Shock and Underworld, and same, he had seen us working, and so like they offered a deal, a very very fat deal actually, like a nice monthly paid deal by EA to work on this game with Steven Spielberg, which allowed me to say no to that company that wanted to have a very beneficial deal for them on The Crossing, and that was very satisfying, by the way. But so we survived, once more. Like, God, we got it. Okay, we're there. Steven Spielberg, Doug Church. I mean, Doug Church is my, I talked about Richard Garrett. Doug Church is my other god. But at this point, they killed the deal. Right? About 10 months later, Doug is in France as working with us, and he just says like, we're gonna have to cancel the deal. I just received an email. So at this point, and we had opened. This is also when we opened the American office in Texas. And at this point, you wonder, is it worth it, or what am I doing? Well, the thing is, every near success matters. And people call those failures, me too sometimes, but it's really, in retrospect, they're often a near success. They're not quite a failure, right? Because they didn't take you where you wanted at the time. And it's like a breakup with a lover or something, right? But sometimes then it goes better. And so here, it's been this all along. So like a nice story, there is, at the end, a resolution that is actually positive. So we struggled, but we always kept our direction. We never did that thing that most business guys do. They will look at you and say like, Raph, those RPGs, those nerdy things, yeah, they're cool, but like, you know what? If we did the next Spider-Man game, that deal that I have with my friends at Sony or whatever, you know, that's it. You'd be set. I'm like, I don't like Spider-Man. I don't want to do that thing. You know, I want to do my thing. That's important to me. But keeping that direction was very important because it tells a message to the world. It tells a message to people who are going to work for you. It's just like, you know, if they come for you, they come for you for what you do. They're not going to come for you to end up working on Spider-Man. They wanted to work on those games, like those first-person immersive games or whatever they are that is important to you. Then it's like a church. You're recruiting the right people, right? And the press recognize it. Gamers sniff that passion. So it all makes sense at the end because what happened, coming back to the rope part, Bethesda showed up, Todd Vaughn, same guy, and because I did PR again when we were going under, which is another counterintuitive thing. We're going under. I spoke to Game Industry Biz, and I just say, yeah, I was just gonna do it. You know, guys, we're screwed. Like we had this amazing deal. It's gone. It's just like I got about 100 people, and I'm not doing anything. Todd calls me. It's like, are you available? And he comes and he proposed us to make the game that we want. For the first time, every other publisher always wanted to, you know, their version of something. This guy just comes in and said, like, we want you make your game. So we made Dishonored with them. We got acquired in the way. Made Dishonored 2, made Prey, and that's it. And the rest is, you know, about a year ago. Then I left because it's been fantastic. I've had a great fun. A lot of fan gifts to myself. In fact, did you notice that I'm just a kid having fun? All these games that I was saying, you know, since I'm 15, or even some of them 11, really. And the guys in the middle, I'm not gonna comment on all the lines, but it's all related. Even Austin, Texas. Why am I in Austin, Texas? Because this is where Richard Garriott had Origin. In fact, about 2 years ago, he came to the anniversary of Arkane, and he told me, you know that in a year from now, your company will be older than what Origin ever did. And I was like, Jesus, that's. But all those guys, you know, like Harvey Smith now is a friend, of course, and is running Arkane. I hired him, and he made Deus Ex. So it's all, and me coming to, as I said, to Austin is because of that. I thought coming to Austin is where the origin, no pun intended, of the type of games that I love is made. So I'm going to find other crazy fanatics like me that I can recruit, right? So that's again, that's all linked to the same thing. Anyway, a few practical advice. I think at the end of the day, in order to lead from passion or to have that free benefit that comes from passion is that you need to have something to express from the core. And it needs to be the most important thing to you, right? Also, the fact of being consistent, honest in your work, and a good worker, no matter if it fails or if you don't make the money that you wanted, or people recognize that, the word spreads and you get a good reputation. And it does at one moment or another. It's not luck. At one moment or another, it pays off. Might take 12 years, but and also that's more like a practical thing. Like I've always found that in my case it was a constraint, but it actually was a good one. Working with less people than you think you need. It's actually a good way to not waste time and money and wait for when a true need arises to now your needs are more defined. So for example, even if I had infinite money and I was to create another studio for some company, I would not start with a boilerplate executive producer, lead man, because if you do that, you're just filling bodies. And then everybody's waiting. They don't quite know who's doing what, etc. Unless it's people you've worked with before and you're just recreating the exact same team. But I would rather start with the smaller team and wait until it's like changing office space, right? It's better to have to start with a small office space, and then when it's repacked and you don't have any choice, then you know exactly how much space you need, etc. So it's the same, I think, with people. I like to make production report to design. I'm sorry, probably every producer here is gonna hate me, but because I think at the end of the day, having a nice game that is not fun but was on time and on money doesn't really help. And the company will make decision based on who's running it, you know. So I think having the creative in power is more risky, more scary, more everything, you know. But at the end, will probably lead to better games. Sincere passion was the ingredient. If you haven't still heard that from me, sincere passion was the ingredient that made everything possible. No compromise. You know, we could have signed so many deals that were just not things we did not want to do, but would have saved us many times. But we never did it because, again, I didn't want to do that to my employees. I didn't want the people who came here to do Arcs 2. I didn't want them to work on Quacky the Duck. They didn't want to do that, so I was not going to do that. No plan B, full commitment to plan A. It does create a culture that attracts the best, and it sends a clear message to the world. Also, have a good mix of followers and challengers, juniors and seniors. Fire your assholes. This is super important. Fire your assholes because no matter how good they are, and we've all had those. We've all had the fantastic lead programmer. He's so good. But Jesus, no one can talk to him. He's always mad. You know, that's not worth it. And every time we fired our assholes, the company was better after. Even if it feels like pain at first because you really needed that person, but it's not worth it. So, and focus on one thing. Again, that's probably another advice that won't be shared by a lot of business people. But every time I've tried to focus on more than one thing, it went to shit. So I think doing one thing right is hard. It's very, very hard. So try to do two things right. Accept that you can't know everything in advance. You know, it's like building the house. Sometimes you just, we'll see. I mean, and the world might change in 4 years from now. It's like, those business plans, they want you to know exactly what's your marketing strategy in 4 years. It's like, I don't know, social media didn't even exist back then. Remember that every near success matters. High five your 15-year-old self. And don't be discouraged by people. I think that's about it. So, thank you. Any question?
How are you applying the lessons that you learned to your next adventure? Is there anything you're going to change?
Well, now I'm going to make a business plan, first of all. No, not really. I mean, it's the same thing. The only big difference is that now I have access to really good, experienced developers that I've worked with or that know me or that I know. And that is going to make the entire difference. And also the network, the fact that now I can talk to the actors of the industry in general without having to go through 6 people before them and talk to the stakeholders it's like having a magic item with you, like of door opening. That is probably the only difference. But as far as lessons learned, I think I do like the idea that you can't know everything in advance and that it's okay, and that as long as you trust that you will solve the problems when they arise, I think that's probably the lesson that I keep with me. Yes? Sorry. There's so yes here. Yes.
So now that you've made pretty much every game that you've ever loved, and in some cases exceeded their legacy, and what's next? Like you can do things that you've already sort of made all the games of your childhood that you really wanted to make, and with the people that you always respected. So where do you go from there?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little more of that. So I'm probably going to contact some people that I am a big fan of and see what I can do with them. It's definitely I'm going to push it somewhere which even scarier for me, because it's kind of a motivator. I want to do I don't want to do something that has already been done. But then if I do something that hasn't been already done, then I'm feeling maybe I'm crazy and it's super stressful. But it's either that, either I'm bored or I'm stressed. So I'd rather be stressed. Yeah, but it will probably be in the indie space, something that is away from the graphics obsession and for which to me is plaguing development these days. So I want to do something that's still I mean, you can do things that are very, very visually compelling with a tenth of the budgets of those big AAA games. So that's where I'm going to go. There was someone else that said no before. Yes.
Did you ever ask Todd if he was going to produce your game for Arcs 2?
Did I ever ask Todd if he wanted to produce Arcs 2?
No, like, you got a different producer and told him no twice. Did you ever ask him if he was going to say yes?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, it happened. Didn't say though. Yes.
So how do you cultivate that naivete with such a cynical consumer base?
Man, it's not just a cynical consumer base, it's a cynical world. I mean, I'm cynical too. It's super hard. It's, it forces you to have like multiple personalities. Because of course I know what I know. I know that it's super hard. I know, I got this kind of like game that is germinating right now in my head, and it's like this game is going to be impossible, But I do think though that you do need to alternate. You need to forget. You need to remember that the experts of today, they are the experts of today. They're not the experts of tomorrow, right? So, and it's the same with the consumers. So if you ask the experts, like. Yeah, that's like, well, remember Galileo? I mean, like, it's the same thing. It's, you're crazy to someone. But new blood, new thinking, crazy thinking often leads to, not even if it doesn't take you exactly to that, that crazy thing, but it takes you somewhere further than everybody would have believed. So I think that's it's forcing yourself into, like, keeping your dreams. And we all have multiple facets to ourselves, right? It's not. We all know that. Someday you might be a responsible person, but a little of a risk taker at the same time, right? So I think it's about cultivating that, like keeping that belief and that understanding that that's how the world has been evolving for thousands of years. It's by embracing those crazy, impossible things. I strongly believe that. I remember On Live, for example. You remember On Live? So On Live, I remember my programmers. They were like, "This thing is never gonna work." Like, because of latency, like, blah, blah. These guys knew too much. I didn't know. I'm not a programmer, so I was like, man, OnLive, that's amazing. And now streaming things are a thing. It exists. And all those problems that my lead programmer said it's impossible to solve have been solved. And I think the reason why it's been made, it was probably be made by someone like me who did not know it was impossible. And his programmers were like, sounds impossible, but we're going to do it because he wants to, But I think a lot of those things are made. Like, knowing too much prevents you from doing things. So you have to really pass that, Yes, Gordon.
So, as you start a new company eventually, what conscious decisions are you making about changing the culture? As you create the culture for that company, what conscious decisions have you made about the differences you want in that culture versus, the culture that you evolved in Arkane?
Well, fortunately, I think we've managed to maintain the culture I've wanted with Arkane pretty good. It was more like we had to constantly battle some of the habits that people had from somewhere else. Like, a lot of people don't like change. Nobody likes it. So when you say, hey, let's do this feature or let's do this asset, and then you say, let's change it, people hate it. So we had to really relax and get to look, breaking things is part of the process. And it's not like we want to break 100% of our things all the time, but, allow a good 20% of things that are going to be broken, 30% of things that are going to be broken, thrown away, and redone. That sounds like painful, but it's the way to do it right. You remember BioWare, of course, and that guy from Ray, actually. I was back during Arx Fatalis. We were talking to them on the phone for a potential deal, And I was talking to BioWare, those guys that made Baldur's Gate and all that. He said, Raphael, do you know the difference between a small budget game and a big budget game? I was, I don't know. I mean, more time, It's like, yeah. What else? And he said, well, in Neverwinter Nights, we made the voice 6 times. We re-recorded the voiceover 6 times. In Arcs, we didn't even finish the first time. We like some of them, we had to cut them. So that makes sense. But I bet people who really suffered in that 6 times re-recording process, telling that they were so unorganized and they don't know what they're doing. I mean, I've heard that all the time. Every time you start doing changes, people don't know. They don't know how to organize things here. It's like, well, no, the chaos is part of it. So that's probably one of them. It's like really keeping that. And a lot of people talk about being agile, etc., but they never mean it. I don't even use that. I don't even use that word agile because it's become like offending. So I just really constantly go at a lower level than agile, as far as like the concepts. It's like, it's normal. We are finding on the way where exactly we're going, and it's not like we don't know anything. It's that we know the big picture, but we don't know all the details. That's probably the biggest one.
Awesome.
So you've always been someone looking forward, so I don't mean to ask this as an insult to that, but all the way back to ARCS, it's quite a bit like Ultima Underworld. And add that to the fact that you were pursuing a deal with EA. Do you ever think about how if they'd actually realized what you were trying to do and said, okay, you make the game you want, we'll call it Ultima Underworld 3. Would you have done that deal, and can you imagine what Arkane would have been like had that been your first game?
Well, I mean, it's been so long ago that now I can tell you that when we did pitch the game with Underworld, with that demo, we did pitch the game to EAP back then. Paul Noras was with me, the founder of Looking Glass, and we were talking about doing it as an Underworld 3, except that EA only wanted the magic part of it, because in Ars Fatalis there was you would draw your sign with a gesture system. That was the innovative part of it. It was not just Underworld. It was like a modernized Underworld plus that spell system, and they loved that specifically. So they wanted to make it the mage game. And I was like, no, don't make it the mage game. So we did not talk further with them. I don't know if the deal would have been signed. I'm not saying there was a deal on the table and it was made, but that kind of like gave me cold feet. But other than that, if they had said, yeah, let's make the game you want, but call it Underworld 3, it would be fantastic. I mean, I was such a fan of Underworld that it would have worked for me. Again, it's all about high-fiving myself. There was nothing that contradicts my fan 15 years old self in doing Underworld 3. All right.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. I have a question though. Like, is there? How many of you have? How many of you have made your own company? So you probably felt some stuff. And how many of you want to make your own company? Wow, you will feel this stuff. Yeah. Awesome. That's cool. So basically in the room, everybody either has or want to. That's really cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.